As small children make sandcastles, couples take long romantic strolls along the beach, and dogs chase tennis balls into and out of the Pacific Ocean, below them the water and sand in much of this area holds the remains of numerous ships and sailors, unbeknownst to the modern-day visitors. Sunshine and warmth come for only a few months of the year in this area, and so visitors and natives alike flock to the beach to soak it all in, blissfully unaware of the potential dangers and graves surrounding them. Welcome to Fast Facts Friday. My name is Eleanor. Just a quick disclaimer for our younger audience before we dive in. This story may be disturbing to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Okay everyone, let's get into it. Today we get into a little-known treasure trove when it comes to interesting shipwrecks, the Graveyard of the Pacific and the Oregon coast. The Oregon coast is a small portion of what is considered the Graveyard of the Pacific, and we'll look at the small portion and the entire graveyard as a whole. Let's start big and then work our way down to Oregon. The Graveyard of the Pacific is a somewhat loosely defined area of the Pacific Northwest coast, starting around Tillamook Bay on the Oregon coast and going all the way up to the rocky western coast of Vancouver Island, ending at Cape Scott Provincial Park. Included in this area are two very dangerous portions of the Graveyard of the Pacific. The Juan de Fuca Strait, which acts as the sea boundary between the Pacific Northwestern edge of the United States and Canada, and the Columbia Bar at the mouth of the Columbia River, which divides the states of Oregon and Washington. Weather in this portion of the United States and near Vancouver, British Columbia is typically cloudy, rainy, foggy, and wet, allowing for unpredictable weather conditions at sea that include dense fogs and storms. Not only this, but the coastal characteristics are dangerous and uneven, including shifting sandbars, rocky reefs and shorelines, and tidal rips, all of which have caused thousands of shipwrecks in the Graveyard of the Pacific beginning around the 18th century. The Columbia Bar has claimed more than 2,000 ships and 700 lives itself, with one book listing 484 wrecks at the south and west sides of Vancouver Island as well. For comparison's sake alone, that is about half of the number of shipwrecks found in the Great Lakes of Northern America, which is a much larger area than the Graveyard of the Pacific. Though major shipwrecks have been, luckily, in decline since the 1920s, there are still several lives lost annually in the Graveyard of the Pacific for a multitude of reasons. Along the Graveyard of the Pacific, one of the most dangerous areas is the giant sandbar that is the Columbia Bar at the mouth of the Columbia River. The Columbia River is the largest river in the Pacific Northwest region of North America, and it begins in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia, Canada. It flows down south into the state of Washington, then turning westward and becoming most of the border for Washington and Oregon, leading into the Pacific Ocean where it ends. Its largest tributary is the Snake River. Both rivers I am extremely familiar with and have seen multiple times. They are both vast and intimidating forces of nature. Another area of great concern when it comes to the Graveyard of the Pacific is Cape Flattery, the northwesternmost point of the contiguous United States, which for our younger audience members means the United States that doesn't include Alaska or Hawaii. Cape Flattery is in Washington, right where the Strait of Juan de Fuca opens into the Pacific Ocean. And speaking of the devil, this strait, that is the Salish Sea's main outlet to the Pacific, is another incredibly dangerous portion of the Graveyard of the Pacific. The reefs and rocks lining the west coast of Vancouver Island is also very deadly, and is another main feature of the Graveyard of the Pacific. As for the wrecks located here, salvage attempts are often very minimally successful, if successful at all. Physical wreckage is also very minimal due to a lot of factors, mostly the age of the many wrecks, the extensive damage often suffered by the ships at the time of the wreck, and the unpredictable weather and sea conditions which can hasten deterioration. There are a few in Oregon to my knowledge that remain visible, and I'll give you a few examples. The J. Marhofer near Depot Bay, located in a little pocket of ocean nicknamed Boiler Bay because of her visible boilers that remain. You can see the boilers in low tides. There's also the Bella, a schooner that is located near Florence, near the mouth of the Siuslaw River. In low tide, you can see portions of her buried in the sand. And finally, the Peter Iredale, a schooner lost on Clatsop Spit, and her wreckage is very clearly visible, and we'll get into her story this Sunday. Speaking of Sundays, if you are enjoying this episode and want to hear more about ships, their careers, and their wrecks, check out our main show Shipwreck Sunday every Sunday night at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Okay, let's keep looking at the graveyard of the Pacific and the Oregon coast. The term Graveyard of the Pacific is believed to have originated from the earliest days of the maritime fur trade, which was popular in the Pacific Northwest. The name not only calls to the danger of shipwrecks, but also the state of open or near warfare in the area between Russia, Spain, Great Britain, and native tribes peoples located in Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. Europeans always wanted to get their hands on the rich lands in the United States, and this includes the Pacific Northwest. Located along the Graveyard of the Pacific is the West Coast Trail, originally called the Dominion Life-Saving Trail, and it is a 47-mile backpacking trail following the southwestern edge of Vancouver Island. It was built in 1907 originally to quickly facilitate the rescue of shipwrecked survivors along the coast, and is now a part of the Pacific Rim National Park. It's a gorgeous hike, only open from May 1st until September 30th by reservation, as to preserve the land in the area. As for Oregon, there are hundreds and hundreds of fascinating shipwrecks that litter the coast, primarily in the area of the Graveyard of the Pacific, starting near Tillamook. Schooners, barks, steamships, and cargo ships, really any kind of ship you can think of, and it's probably wrecked near Oregon. The oldest known shipwreck in the Pacific Northwest wrecked near Nehalem, Oregon, and it is the Spanish galleon Santo Cristo de Burgos, wrecking in 1693. One of the descendants of the survivors was Chief Gilchis, one of the last free chiefs of the Tillamook tribe. One of the newest shipwrecks in the area, and one of the most famous, was the cargo vessel MV New Carissa, and we made a video on her a few months back. She ran aground and broke apart in Coos Bay, Oregon in February of 1999, and some crazy tactics were employed to placate the natural disaster that would, and still does, plague the coast to this day. Oregon is a small portion of the Graveyard of the Pacific, but this small portion of coast right at the mouth of the Columbia River is one of the deadliest areas of the Pacific Northwest, claiming hundreds of lives and thousands of ships, and that's just the wrecks we know of. On the Columbia River today, you can still see some cargo vessels and paddle wheel steamers passing by, with a myriad of kite surfers clustering in certain areas of the river on warm summer days. The Graveyard of the Pacific is a gorgeous area of land and sea, though behind this beauty is a dark, cold, watery grave. Rest in peace to all of those who lost their lives, and may we continue to honor their memories and treat this area with respect. If you liked that story and wanted to hear something similar, check out our Oregon Coast Shipwrecks playlist in the cards. Stay tuned this Sunday for the story of Peter Iredale, a schooner that ran aground on Clatsop Spit with wreckage that is still visible to this day. Thank you for tuning into Fast Facts Friday, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next time.